Good morning, everyone. This is Ainsworth, and today I want to walk you through, organ by organ, hour by hour, exactly what happens inside your body when you compress your entire daily nutrition into a single meal. I'll explain what your pancreas does during the 23 hours when food is absent, what your liver transitions into when glycogen runs dry, what happens to the lining of your intestines when they are given genuine rest for the first time in years, what your brain switches to when glucose from your plate is no longer available, and why that switch does not produce the cognitive collapse most people expect, but instead produces something that feels remarkably close to the opposite. Now, I am not standing here telling you to eat once a day. That is not what today's lecture is. Today is an education. I am going to walk you through the 23-hour timeline between meals so you can understand with real mechanistic precision what each of your major organ systems is doing at each phase, why they are doing it, and what conditions are being created that simply cannot exist when food is arriving every 4 to 5 hours throughout the day. And if you stay with me through the entire thing, you will leave today understanding a level of your own physiology that fundamentally changes how you think about meal frequency, metabolic flexibility, and what your body was actually designed to do. But before we begin, if you are new to my channel, subscribe right now and turn on the bell icon, because this is what I do. I take the real science, the actual mechanisms, the physiology that matters, and I deliver it to you in a way that allows you to make informed decisions rather than following trends. I do this every single week. And if this kind of depth is what you have been looking for, you are in the right place. Now, before I get into the core of today's lecture, I want to mention something that directly complements everything we are covering. My ebook on metabolic fat loss takes the science of insulin, cortisol, visceral fat, and hormonal fat storage and organizes it into a complete 30-day protocol with daily schedules, meal timing, food combinations, and printable tracking materials. If you want the full structured framework for applying everything I'm about to walk you through today, the link is in the comments below. Check it out after you finish watching. Let us begin at hour 0. Your last meal has just ended. And the first thing I want you to understand is that this is not where fasting begins. Your body does not receive a signal the moment you put your fork down. What happens instead is a gradual, sequential, hormonally orchestrated transition that moves through distinct phases with a precision that should genuinely humble anyone who studies it carefully. In the first 0 to 4 hours, you are in the postprandial state, the fed state. Digestion is actively underway, the stomach is mechanically and chemically breaking down what you consumed. The small intestine is absorbing nutrients across its epithelial lining and delivering them into the bloodstream. Blood glucose rises as carbohydrates are processed. And in direct response to that rise, the pancreas releases insulin. Now, I want you to think of insulin here not simply as a blood sugar management hormone. Insulin at this stage is a master traffic director issuing a very specific set of instructions. Move glucose into cells that need it immediately, direct the excess into glycogen storage in the liver and skeletal muscle, and critically suppress lipolysis, suppress the breakdown of stored fat. Because from insulin's perspective, when glucose is abundant, there is no reason whatsoever to access emergency reserves. The supply line is active. The delivery trucks are still unloading. Nobody opens the vault when the warehouse is receiving fresh shipments, and I need you to understand something about this that most explanations get either incomplete or entirely wrong. This is not a malfunction. Insulin suppressing fat oxidation in the presence of abundant glucose is the system functioning exactly as designed. The problem is not that insulin exists. The problem is that in the modern eating pattern of 3 meals plus snacks plus constant grazing, insulin never gets the opportunity to step back. It is always on, always elevated, always directing traffic towards storage, always suppressing access to the deeper reserves, and the body, no matter how intelligent its design, cannot run its renovation systems while the construction crew is still inside the building. If you are still with me, comment below the word OMAD right now, and I will know how many of you are genuinely here to understand the biology behind this protocol, rather than looking for another surface-level summary that tells you what to do without explaining why it works. Now, as we move past hour 4 and into the 4 to 8 hour window, the first meaningful transition begins. Digestion is winding down. The stream of incoming nutrients slows and then stops. Blood glucose stabilizes and begins its initial decline. Insulin output from the pancreas starts tapering, and a hormone called ghrelin rises. And here is the part I need you to hear clearly, because this is where most people make the decision that prevents them from ever experiencing what their body is capable of. Ghrelin does not rise in a straight line that climbs endlessly until you eat. That is not how it works. Ghrelin rises in waves. Predictable, rhythmic, conditioned waves that are synchronized almost entirely with your habitual eating patterns. If you eat every 4 hours, your body expects food at 4 hours and ghrelin rises to remind you. But if you do not respond to that signal, something remarkable happens. Ghrelin falls back down on its own. Typically within 60 to 90 minutes, the wave passes, the hunger dissipates. Not because of willpower, not because you distracted yourself, because the hormonal signal completed its cycle and the body accepted the answer. This is one of the most liberating biological facts you can learn about your own physiology. Hunger is not a linear escalation toward collapse. It is a wave. And every wave passes on its own. Comment below and tell me honestly, have you ever pushed past a hunger wave during a fast and noticed that the hunger actually decreased instead of increased? I want to know how many of you have experienced this firsthand, because what you felt was not a trick of the mind. That was ghrelin completing its cycle. And understanding that mechanism changes your entire relationship with the sensation of hunger. Now, during this window, the liver is drawing on its glycogen reserves to maintain stable blood sugar for the brain. Glycogen is the body's most accessible energy pantry. Think of it as quick access cache. It is right there. It requires minimal hormonal signaling to access. And as long as that pantry has inventory, the body has no metabolic reason to go deeper. Fat stores remain untouched. The deeper cellular repair mechanisms remain dormant, but the hormonal runway is being cleared, quietly, beneath your awareness. The conditions for those systems to activate are being assembled hour by hour. If you are finding value in how I am breaking this down, do me a favor right now and give this video a thumbs up and hype this lecture so the algorithm pushes it to more people who deserve to understand their own biology at this level. This kind of content takes significant effort to research and present with the precision it deserves, and your engagement is what allows it to reach people who need it. Now, as we approach the 8 to 12 hour mark, the internal environment shifts more meaningfully. Insulin continues its decline. And here is where a hormonal handover occurs that I consider one of the most elegant transitions in human physiology. The pancreas reduces insulin output and begins allowing glucagon to rise. Glucagon is insulin's counter-regulatory partner. Where insulin's message is store, accumulate, suppress, glucagon's message is mobilize, access, release. And these two hormones do not compete. They take turns. They hand authority to one another based on the metabolic conditions, and the handover is seamless, automatic, simply because food stopped arriving. By the 10 to 12 hour mark, liver glycogen is being drawn down to critical levels. The pantry is running low, and the body now faces a decision that it has been quietly preparing for since hour 4. It can shut down, or it can unlock the vault. And since you are a survival machine designed by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to function without food for extended periods, your body unlocks the vault. Insulin drops to its lowest baseline level. And this is the signal that the body's biochemistry has been waiting for. With insulin out of the way, an enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase activates with full authority. This enzyme is the molecular key that unlocks your fat cells. For the first time in perhaps days, your body begins drawing energy meaningfully from adipose tissue. Stored triglycerides are broken down into free fatty acids and glycerol, released into the bloodstream, and delivered to tissues throughout the body. You are no longer running on what you ate at your last meal. You are running on stored reserves that your body has been accumulating specifically for this purpose. And here is the reframe I want you to carry with you. This is not the body in crisis. This is the body doing exactly what it was designed to do. The crisis, from a purely biological standpoint, is never allowing this transition to occur. Eating so frequently that hormone-sensitive lipase never receives the insulin-low signal it needs to unlock fat stores. That is the abnormality. What you are experiencing at hour 12 is the restoration of normal metabolic function. Comment below and tell me, how many meals do you currently eat per day, and have you ever gone a full 12 hours without eating? I am asking because this specific question reveals whether your body has had any recent experience accessing its own fat reserves, and the answer directly affects how you would experience the transition I am about to describe next. Now, as we cross the 12-hour threshold and move into the 12 to 16-hour window, the metabolic landscape changes completely. And this is where the experience of eating once a day diverges dramatically from what most people expect. The liver begins converting incoming fatty acids into ketone bodies, primarily beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate. And I need to correct a fundamental misunderstanding that most people carry about ketones because it directly affects how they interpret what is happening in their own body. Most people have been taught to think of ketones as a backup fuel, an inferior substitute that the body reluctantly produces when its preferred fuel is unavailable. That understanding is not just incomplete, it is wrong in a way that matters. Ketones are signaling molecules. They communicate with the brain, they interact with immune cells, they influence gene expression, they carry a message to virtually every tissue in the body that the metabolic environment has shifted and the body should operate accordingly. Reduce inflammation, increase cellular efficiency, suppress unnecessary appetite signaling, prioritize repair over storage. And the brain's response to ketones is remarkable. The brain cannot burn fat directly. It requires either glucose or ketones. And when ketones arrive in sufficient concentration, the brain does not merely tolerate them. It operates on them with extraordinary efficiency. Ketones produce less oxidative stress during combustion than glucose. They stabilize neuronal firing patterns. They reduce the excitatory neurotransmitter activity that creates mental noise and cognitive reactivity. This is why somewhere around hour 14 to 16, people consistently report something they did not expect. The brain fog clears, focus sharpens, mental clarity arrives without effort. Not because they are imagining it, because the neurochemical environment of the brain has genuinely changed. Ketones are delivering cleaner, more stable fuel to neurons that have spent their entire lives running predominantly on glucose. And the difference is unmistakable. And here is where hunger does something that surprises almost everyone who experiences it for the first time. It softens. Ketones suppress ghrelin. The hunger waves that arrive predictably at hours 4 and 8 become less frequent and less insistent. Many people find that hunger quietly diminishes somewhere around hour 15 or 16 and is replaced by a calm, steady state that feels entirely different from the constant hunger-satiety hunger cycle of frequent eating. That is not discipline. That is not your mind overcoming your body. That is beta-hydroxybutyrate doing exactly what it is biochemically designed to do, signaling the brain that adequate fuel is available from internal reserves and that eating is not urgent. If this distinction between what you have been told about hunger and fasting and what the science actually reveals is resonating with you, press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon right now. Because every single week on this channel, I take the claims, the fears, the surface-level narratives, and I walk you through the actual mechanisms so you can see for yourself what is real and what is marketing. And what I am about to cover next, the autophagy activation, the growth hormone response, and what happens to your gut during 23 hours of genuine rest, is where this lecture enters territory that genuinely changes how you think about your body's relationship with food. Now let us move into the window that I consider the most physiologically significant of the entire 23-hour cycle, hour 16 through approximately hour 20, because this is where eating once a day stops being a passive act of not eating and becomes an active metabolic event. New systems activate during this window that simply cannot turn on when food is arriving every 4 to 5 hours. And the depth of what happens here is what separates OMAD from every other conventional eating pattern in terms of cellular impact. By hour 16 to 18, insulin has been at its lowest sustained level for several hours. mTOR, the molecular growth pathway that is activated by eating and that suppresses cellular cleanup, has been profoundly suppressed. And AMPK, the cellular energy sensor that I have described in previous lectures as the body's internal efficiency auditor, is fully active. These three conditions converging simultaneously create the precise molecular environment that autophagy requires. And at this point, autophagy is not just beginning, it is accelerating. I want you to understand what autophagy actually looks like at the cellular level, because the word gets used so casually in health content that most people have lost sight of what it actually represents. Your cells are identifying damaged proteins, misfolded molecular structures, dysfunctional organelles, and cellular debris that has been accumulating during every fed state hour. They are systematically tagging these damaged components, enclosing them in specialized membranes and delivering them to lysosomes where they are broken down and recycled into raw materials for new construction. This is not the body destroying itself. This is the body conducting a deep renovation, tearing out the damaged infrastructure and recycling the materials for newer, more efficient structures. And here is the part that directly connects to what your organs are experiencing during OMAD specifically. Mitophagy, the specialized form of autophagy that targets damaged mitochondria, becomes meaningfully active during this window. Mitochondria are the energy-producing organelles inside every cell. When they are healthy, they produce clean energy with minimal waste. When they are old and damaged, they produce energy poorly and generate excess reactive oxygen species that damage DNA, proteins, and cell membranes from the inside. Damaged mitochondria are one of the primary drivers of cellular aging, chronic inflammation, and that persistent low-grade fatigue that so many people accept as normal. During OMAD, every single day, you are giving your body a window long enough to identify and clear these damage generators. Every single day, not once a week, not during a special extended fast, every day. And when you eat your one meal and provide the raw materials for rebuilding, newer, more efficient mitochondria are constructed to replace what was cleared. This daily cycle of clearing and rebuilding is one of the most powerful arguments for the OMAD pattern specifically, because it creates a rhythm of cellular renovation that shorter eating windows simply cannot replicate with the same consistency. Comment below the word daily right now if you just realized that OMAD creates a daily autophagy cycle rather than requiring extended multi-day fasts to access these repair mechanisms. I want to know how many of you are seeing this distinction for the first time because it fundamentally changes how you evaluate this eating pattern. Now, let me talk about the growth hormone. I need to address this directly because it dismantles the single most common objection to eating once a day, the fear of muscle loss. By hour 18 to 20, growth hormone has risen to levels that are several-fold above your normal fed state baseline. Some studies document increases of 3 to 5 times normal levels during sustained fasting of this duration. And growth hormone is not merely a muscle preservation hormone, though that function alone is significant enough to eliminate the concern. Growth hormone at these concentrations is actively supporting tissue repair throughout the body. Connective tissue, organ tissue, the structural proteins that maintain cellular architecture. The hormonal message is explicit and unambiguous. Burn the stored fat, protect the functional tissue, recycle the damaged material, preserve the structural integrity. Your body is not consuming your muscle during a 23-hour fast. Your body is deploying one of its most powerful hormonal tools to ensure that muscle is specifically and actively protected while fat is preferentially oxidized. That is not compromise. That is intelligent, hormonally coordinated resource management operating exactly as it was designed to operate. If this correction between what you have feared about OMAD and what the hormonal science actually demonstrates is giving you a fundamentally different perspective, subscribe to this channel right now because I make these corrections every single week. I take the fears, the myths, the incomplete explanations, and I replace them with the actual mechanisms so you can evaluate for yourself what is real. Now let's talk about the gut, and I want to spend meaningful time here because what happens to the gastrointestinal tract during 23 hours of genuine rest is something that most discussions overlook entirely, and it may be one of the most significant benefits of this eating pattern for long-term health. When you eat 3 meals plus snacks throughout the day, your digestive system is in a perpetual state of activity. The epithelial lining of the intestines, which in a healthy state forms a selective barrier that allows nutrients through while keeping pathogens and undigested particles out, is under constant mechanical and chemical stimulation. The tight junctions between intestinal cells, the molecular gates that control what passes through the gut wall and what does not, are continuously stressed. Repair processes that require reduced mechanical activity cannot fully engage because the workload never pauses. During a 23-hour eating gap, the gut experiences genuine rest. The migrating motor complex, a cyclical pattern of electrical activity that sweeps through the digestive tract like a cleaning wave, operates fully and repeatedly. This complex cannot activate during digestion. It only runs between meals. And its function is to clear residual food particles, bacteria, and cellular debris from the intestinal tract. On a conventional eating schedule of 3 meals plus snacks, the migrating motor complex barely completes a single full cycle before the next meal interrupts it. During OMAD, it runs through multiple complete cycles. The gut is being cleaned top to bottom repeatedly before the next meal arrives. The tight junctions in the intestinal lining, those molecular gates I described, begin tightening and repairing during this rest period. Inflammatory signaling in the gut wall decreases. The microbial balance begins shifting as well. Opportunistic bacteria that thrive on constant sugar and refined carbohydrate availability are starved back, while resilient beneficial bacteria that can survive fasting periods remain and potentially expand into the ecological space that has been cleared. This is not a dramatic overnight transformation, but compounded daily, week after week, month after month, this rhythm of gut rest and gut renewal produces measurable improvements in intestinal barrier function that most people experience as reduced bloating, improved digestion, and a quieter, less reactive gastrointestinal system. Comment below and tell me, have you noticed changes in your digestion or your gut comfort since adopting any form of intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating? I am asking because the gut restoration mechanisms I just described are exactly what produce those changes, and most people experience the improvement without ever knowing the biology behind it. If you are finding this lecture valuable, give me a quick thumbs up right now and hype this video so it reaches more people who are serious about building long-term metabolic health rather than chasing short-term diet trends. Better information leads to better decisions, and better decisions compounded over months and years produce fundamentally different health outcomes. Now, for those of you who want the complete structured protocol for implementing OMAD with specific meal composition guidance, timing strategies, and the hormonal reasoning behind each recommendation, my ebook on metabolic fat loss covers exactly this. It takes the science of insulin dynamics, autophagy windows, gut restoration, and fat mobilization, and organizes it into a practical 30-day framework with daily tracking tools. The link is in the description and pinned in the comments. Now let us talk about hour 23. You are approaching your eating window, and I want to be precise about the physiological state your body is in at this moment, because understanding this state determines whether you capture the full benefit of everything your body has built over the preceding 23 hours, or undermine a meaningful portion of it with a single poorly chosen meal. At hour 23, your insulin sensitivity is at its peak. Your cells are in the most receptive state they will achieve all day. Think of every cell as a dry sponge. A cell that has been fed constantly throughout the day is a saturated sponge. It cannot absorb efficiently. It resists further input. That is insulin resistance in its simplest expression. But a cell that has been in a low insulin environment for 23 hours is a dry sponge. It is primed to absorb nutrients with extraordinary efficiency. Every gram of protein, every micronutrient, every amino acid you deliver in your one meal will be utilized with a precision and completeness that a fed all-day cell simply cannot match. Your growth hormone is peaking. Your autophagy machinery has been running for hours, clearing damaged proteins and organelles, and creating the raw material demand for reconstruction. Your gut has been cleaned and rested and is prepared to process a substantial meal with full enzymatic capacity. You are not weak at hour 23, you are optimized, and what you put into your body at this moment matters profoundly. Comment below and tell me what your current OMAD meal looks like if you are already practicing this protocol, or what you would plan as your one meal if you are considering it. I am asking because this single variable, the composition of that one meal, determines more about your results than almost any other factor, and I want to know how many of you are optimizing for it versus treating it as a reward for enduring the fast. Now here is how the refeeding should be structured if you want to honor the biology your body has spent 23 hours building. Start with protein, high-quality, complete protein. This is not negotiable. Your body has been in a state of cellular renovation for hours. The autophagy machinery has broken down damaged proteins and created a genuine demand for amino acids to build replacements. Protein at the start of the meal provides those amino acids directly and triggers a gentle, controlled reactivation of mTOR that shifts the body from cleanup mode into rebuild mode. This is the transition from renovation to construction, and it should begin with the building materials, not with sugar. Add healthy fats, avocados, olive oil, quality nuts. Since your body is already in fat-burning mode, consuming fat keeps that metabolic machinery running smoothly and keeps your insulin response moderate rather than producing the dramatic spike that refined carbohydrates would create. And then volume. Because you are eating once, you need nutrient density and physical volume in a single sitting. Fiber-rich vegetables, leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, fermented foods if your digestion tolerates them. These provide the potassium, magnesium, and micronutrients that prevent the cramping and fatigue that people incorrectly attribute to OMAD itself rather than to mineral insufficiency. If you break a 23-hour fast with refined carbohydrates, processed food, or a meal designed around sugar and starch, you are taking the most insulin-sensitive state your cells have achieved all day and using it to produce the largest possible insulin spike. That one decision can blunt a meaningful portion of the metabolic benefit that was built over the entire preceding fasting window. The fast and the meal are not separate events. They are two halves of the same biological cycle, and both halves must be executed with intention. Now, I must be completely honest about who should not attempt this protocol, because I believe in giving you the complete picture with the same precision and seriousness I give the science itself. If you are pregnant or breastfeeding, OMAD is not appropriate. The metabolic demands of supporting another life require consistent nutritional input distributed throughout the day. If you have a history of eating disorders, compressing all eating into a single window can reactivate harmful psychological patterns and should not be attempted without specific professional guidance. If you are currently taking insulin or sulfonylurea medications for diabetes, 23 hours without food can cause dangerous hypoglycemia without direct medical supervision. If you have advanced kidney disease, the metabolic shifts during prolonged daily fasting carry specific risks that require clinical oversight. And if you are significantly underweight or in a state of active malnutrition, restricting eating frequency adds physiological stress to a system that needs nourishment, not restriction. Comment below and tell me if you have any specific health conditions that make you uncertain about whether OMAD is appropriate for you, because questions like that deserve honest, specific answers rather than the generic advice to simply consult your doctor that most content creators offer as a liability shield rather than genuine guidance. I also want to address the adaptation period with complete honesty. If you transition from 3 meals a day directly to 1 meal a day tomorrow, you will likely feel terrible for the first several days. Headaches, fatigue, irritability. This is not because OMAD is harmful. This is because your body needs to build the metabolic machinery to burn fat efficiently. It takes time to manufacture the enzymes. It takes time for the liver to become efficient at producing ketones. This is called metabolic flexibility, and it is earned through gradual adaptation, not forced through abrupt change. Push your eating window back gradually, compress it over days or weeks. Allow the biology to build what it needs to build. And during the transition, electrolyte management is essential. When insulin drops, your kidneys excrete sodium more readily. A quality mineral salt in your water during the fasting window can resolve most of the transition symptoms that people mistakenly interpret as evidence that the protocol itself is causing harm. Now, if you want my complete 30-day protocol that takes every element of today's lecture and organizes it into a structured daily plan with meal guidance, timing strategies, food combinations, and printable tracking materials. My ebook on metabolic fat loss has everything you need to go from understanding this science to living it consistently. The link is in the comments below. Check it out today. And if this lecture gave you a more precise and more honest understanding of what your body is capable of during a single meal eating pattern, please hype this video and share it with someone who deserves this information about their own biology, because that is how this kind of education reaches the people who need it most. Thank you so much for your attention today. I will see you again very soon in my next lecture.